If there is a message which says it's streaming live. Good afternoon, good day to you, everybody around the world listening to our Digital Monetary Symposium. We're getting to a really interesting stage in the day where we're going to be talking about the digital euro. There's been a lot of talk about sovereignty earlier on today, and we're going to be examining what this means, therefore, for the digitalization of the currency in the single currency zone in Europe. And to talk about this are three people with a great deal of experience and indeed responsibility in this area. Wolfram Seidemann, who's the chief executive of Giesecke+Devrient Currency Technology, who knows a lot about this, but also knows a lot about good, old, straightforward, old-fashioned cash, is here to talk to us. I'm very pleased to have Natacha Valla, who's actually speaking from Saudi Arabia, very adventurously, where she is at the moment, but she is now the Dean of the Sciences Po School of Management and Innovation in Paris, having held a very responsible role where she became very famous the world over as the Deputy Director General for the monetary policy side at the European Central Bank. So she can speak, I think, rather well for what's going on at the ECB, since she only left the ECB about a year ago. And then Thomas Mayer, who's a very well-known economist in Germany and much wider afield, who had a glittering career at the Deutsche Bank. He then became more independent, shall we say, and he's ploughed his own furrow since then. He's a founding director and the head of the Institute of the Flossbach von Storch Wealth Management Setup, which is a very well-known fielder of all sorts of very important and interesting currency and economic questions. It looks after a lot of money for a lot of relatively well-off German clients. So welcome, Wolfram, welcome, Natacha, welcome, Thomas. Just before we get going about the opportunities and risks of a digital euro, I just want to put a question to the audience, and it'll be flashing up, I hope, in your screens. And the question is whether or not you think that we will see a digital euro in either 2, 5 or 7 years, or never. If you could answer those questions, please, using your digital contraptions. And then the second question is, do we need a digital euro in order to safeguard or uphold, protect European sovereignty? Yes or no? Please do answer those questions. And then we'll be comparing what you say now with what you say at the end of this session after our three contestants have had a chance of speaking. So first of all, Wolfram, I mentioned that you know a great deal about this. Could you set the scene for us? Where are we now regarding the digital euro in Europe? What is the present state of play?
Well, I mean, clearly this pandemic situation has put a lot of speed acceleration on digitization. And as we convene now virtually, there is also an increase of debate, which way should public currency go? Just take an example, David. If we would decide to buy a birthday present for you and settle it through the internet, it's quite unlikely that we are subscribed to the same system. So if we would have a digital euro, that could be solved. And we are far away from a cashless society, since still, according to all latest figures, around 70% of person-to-person and point-of-sale payments are currently done with cash. But cash comes with one disadvantage: it doesn't work in digital business models. And the question is then, what public payment instrument can the citizen use when she or he doesn't want to subscribe to any third party, but wants to participate in financial digital inclusion? And I think here we made a lot of progress recently, and moving towards a much clearer picture. And it's interesting to follow and to participate in that debate. And I look forward to a good discussion on in this session now.
Natacha, this issue about a cashless society, not always universally popular. You've just written a book, which I'm going to be portraying here about the future of money. It's going to come out in an English edition as well. It is produced by Odile Jacob of France, and it's in all good French bookshops. And you're looking very closely at the whole identity of money. You call it also the fundamental instrument of human dignity. You know, it's a very, very important concept, money. Could you tell us what you think is the present state of play? Are we actually moving slowly but inexorably towards a cashless society?
I think there's a distinction to be made, and Wolfram was hinting to that, between the form, the actual materiality or immateriality of money and what that money has taken through ages, and the way this form is changing right now. This is one thing. But I would say an even more important thing is who issues money and what is the stability of this money, and what does it mean for society? What does it represent in society? What does it represent in societies where we have a state, a sovereign entity that represents, collective values and a notion of être ensemble? And I think here the distinction is key, because the first one is very much related to what was said before, namely, we are becoming very, very digital in our ways, in our daily lives, but also in the way our institutions are being operating, in the way value added is being created. And because of that, obviously, the form that money is taking has to mirror this, has even to drive this, maybe in some sense. And in that sense, it's very positive to have sort of, private sector initiatives that, pushing central banks around and saying, maybe banknotes are not the way we need to have central bank money. Now, the other question, which is deeper, I think, is not really, is fairly resilient to whatever form money is taking. And the question as to whether money should be issued by the sovereign or could be issued by other entities that are not related to the sovereign, but to the private sector in a decentralized way or centralized, but in different ways, is of a different nature. And I would say the first one is bound to happen. It is good that it's happening, that the form of money is changing. But the second is something that I don't see being put into questionable currently, and I don't see any circumstances unless we really deeply change the way we live together and the way we organize, in our cases, our democracies, but even in countries which have no democratic foundations. I think this link with a sovereign entity that has a role, and again, institutional arrangements can be very different, but a role to ensure that there is trust in money. This will not be, questioned anytime soon. That's why, when we have what we call fiat money, it's fiat for a very good reason, because we know that behind the value of a dollar, a euro, a yuan, any, sovereign-based currency, there's the ability and willingness to keep the value of that money stable. And I think that is mirrored in the way the history of the institutional history of central banks has evolved. The fact that, gradually we have felt the need to introduce central bank independence shows that there's a common value to have an apolitical management of currencies, because we needed that stability. And I think there's a lot of confusion. I don't want to take too much time, so maybe I should stop here.
Well, I was going to say, you're really leading us into some quite deep waters, and this is a perfect place to bring in Thomas, because Thomas, I believe you feel that also a digital euro is necessary basically to stand up to the private sector competition that Natacha is talking about. On the other hand, there's not a state behind the euro. There's 19 individual states with one central bank. And this has been one of the problems of the euro right from the beginning. I don't want this to be a symposium on the euro. It's a symposium on digital currencies. But where do you think there will be some problems on the way towards a digital euro? You yourself put forward an idea a couple of years ago, maybe slightly playfully, that there should be a stable coin in Europe backed by government bonds, and that could be the new digital euro. Do you think something like that has got any chance at all of actually coming into being?
I think Natacha has raised a very, very important point, namely that we have to be mindful of what sort of money system we're talking about. I mean, historically, there have been basically two sorts of system. One is the commodity money system, that many people associate with gold as a medium of exchange or silver as a medium of exchange. And the other one is the credit money system, where money is basically a tradable credit instrument. And the fiat money system you're present in is basically of the second type. Following a German writer of the early 19th century, it's called charterlist money. So the state now is responsible for it. Now there are these two sorts of monies that have been historically around. And now comes the euro. And I think it's an interesting question we are seeing here, because we do not have a monetary union. We have a cash union. Because in this present money system in which we are, in the fiat money system, there's on the one hand central bank money, which is a non-redeemable liability of the central bank. So a euro note is a euro note is a euro note, and the ECB won't exchange it into gold or anything else at a fixed exchange rate, right? So there is the central bank money, and there is the private sector money, which is the cash accounts that we hold with banks. The cash accounts of the banks are private liabilities. The banks can only claim, or allowed to, that they will exchange it anytime into legal tender, so the real euro, because they have a license to do that. However, there is presently in the Eurozone no guarantee that they will do it in an unlimited way. There's only insurance, a money insurance, deposit insurance of up to 100,000 euros. Beyond, you're on your own, formally.
But sorry to interrupt here, Thomas, but just to keep it relatively simple for the audience, do you think that, and then we'll go back to Wolfram to talk about some of the societal issues, but do you think that this fundamental difference about the euro, which is it is actually an agglomeration of sovereign countries that have not formed a state, do you think this is going to be a major hindrance to putting together a digital euro?
It could actually, the digital euro could actually be the solution. That's my point, because right now the bank notes are not a solution, because if I want to transfer money to Italy, I would have to go there and hand over the note. However, if I have a digital euro, we could have a true monetary union in the sense that we have fully backed money that is everywhere of the same credit quality. Right now, the only money that is the same credit quality in the entire euro area are the banknotes, but not the money on account.
And that would be backed by this joint issuance of government bonds, maybe the new bonds that the European Commission is going to be issuing, for example. Well, I mean, that could be a route.
Then I don't want to get into complicated details, but what you would have to do is to make the euro basically the same all over the euro area, is to issue this digital euro. And then, as I said, and this is, I'm borrowing from the Chicago plan, so some of the economists here listening to us will know what I mean. You could back this fully by claims on the government.
Yes. Okay. Well, I'm going to just have to stop you there, because we could have a whole symposium just about your ideas, I think. Thomas, it's fascinating. Let's go back to Wolfram and talk about some practical aspects. You've been involved in this game for long enough to know that there are lots of issues. We heard this also from the People's Bank of China about anonymity, for example. They spoke about managed anonymity, for example. What are the societal issues, Wolfram, that we have to consider here? The average person, particularly in Germany, does cherish very much the privacy that comes from banknotes.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The ECB just started a public consultation on how could the digital euro look like, and the majority of the respondents responded that privacy is definitely one of the key attributes that a digital form of public cash or public currency should have. And I think that is really an important feature which comes with challenges from a technical perspective, because you need to offer privacy by design in order to have public acceptance on one side, and on the other side, you need to offer enough transparency to comply with all anti-money laundering and compliance regulation that the financial system has rightfully developed to avoid bad behavior. And that, from the very first glance, contradicting requirements actually is the key of the design of a digital currency system, which we worked on since 5 years to solve that contradiction. And I think that's important in order to have full acceptance of the digital euro, but at the same time also allow, if you are intended to trade with larger volumes, that the financial system stays intact, because we also want to avoid unintended consequences like disintermediation of the financial system, which, by the way, is a question I would like to throw back to Mr. Meyer, because in your proposal, I hardly see a role of the commercial banks. So what is your concept of a digital euro?
Let's have a quick answer to that. Are you going to put the Deutsche Bank out of business, Thomas?
You see, right now, in our present money system, and this is what I think people are not really fully appreciating, money is being lent into existence. So in other words, when a bank extends a credit, it then puts the money that is generated by credit extension on account of the customer. What I've been talking about is that one would introduce an entirely different concept. Look, Bitcoin is not lent into existence, right? It is created basically by putting in energy. It's like gold. Gold was also created by putting in energy, by digging it out. So here comes the problem. Yes, I'm actually in favor of this intermediation of the banks in the present system. Why? Because especially in the euro area, we have a combination of official money and private money. And since we do not have a state, a euro state, it seems to me that we have a systematic inconsistency.
Yes, I can actually see. I can see a really good argument here developing. I mean, we will have to do a session on this. I think because time is running ahead.
On your question, David, okay, very, very much. But what is the role of the banks in such a system? It is basically taking deposits that they collect and lending them on. That's what the textbooks say banks would do. But in reality, they don't do this. They lend the money into existence. They don't collect it.
No, I think what you are describing is a very cleansing state that we could be getting into. I just want, before going on to Natacha to talk about this society angles, I just want to tell people what the results of the opinion poll were, and maybe that will change. It's quite interesting. The poll update when will we see a digital euro, and the percentages here, I'm just scrolling that down. 12% said within 2 years, 35% said within 5 years, 49% said within 7 years, and 4% said never. So that's actually quite damning regarding your old employer, Natacha. And also I'm just reading out what the poll was also regarding the issue about, does Europe need a digital euro to protect its monetary sovereignty? 73% of the opinion in this audience say yes, it does. 27% no. So, Natacha, this is a really interesting question for you. The audience seems to think that Europe does need the digital euro, which I think you do as well, but they think it's not coming, maybe because of all these imponderables that we've been discussing just now. How do you react to that, Natacha? And also tell us also about how French people would react if there was a digital currency, which could perhaps deprive them of the independence and privacy that comes from cash.
No, I think there are three questions really. The first one is, I mean, to your last question, what would the French say if they were to be a digital euro? Well, I think as anyone in Europe, we are all advancing at a very high pace in terms of, how to make payments. Sorry, that was my son.
Yes.
And we are getting used to make payments, with all kinds of payment systems and intermediary money forms without even knowing. We are involving sometimes banks that we are not even aware we are involving in making of payments. And in a sense, and that comes back to what Thomas was saying, when we have a banknote as a citizen, when a citizen has a banknote at hand, it holds a tangible form of central bank money. There's no other way a citizen has access to central bank money than by holding a banknote. So if instead of holding a banknote, I hold an app which has a euro sign, which is basically a digital euro, does it really make a difference? Not really. It's only another way to have access to central bank money. Now, this is already enough. Another question is whether the central bank should have, give access to its balance sheet to private customers and de-intermediate and challenge the banking system. I don't think we'll ever get there at any point. We might have some sort of change in the intermediation model, whereby banks, commercial banks, will intermediate the access to central bank money, being digital, but that does not necessarily jeopardize the role of banks. So I think European banks are too wary of, bad outcomes and being,
Well, that's a very good point. Could I just drill into the question about the ECB? Does your former employer really want a digital euro? They seem to be making a lot of noise about it, but are they really advancing on that path? And do you agree with the audience that thinks it's going to come only after 5 to 7 years?
Well, I would think first 5 years is not that far away. If that's done in 5 years, there are lots of technical things are advancing at a very high pace, but because if it's sovereign money, you also have to acknowledge for the fact that there are democratic steps to be sort of gone through. In particular, through parliamentary discussions and things that are really related to the fact that it is like the sort of privacy dimension, the data dimension of introducing a digital money are really key. Who should hold? I mean, if we were to end up with a digital euro, which I believe will happen, and where I believe the ECB doesn't have any distaste about it, very pragmatic. Saying, and I think Mrs. Lagarde even stated it that way, but I think if the world is advancing in a digital sort of form, why shouldn't money and why shouldn't central banks be part of it? They need to be part of it because it's one of the public sector service that the central bank has to offer.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that comment. I just want to go on to Thomas and then go back to Wolfram about what the practical issues are for industry. But the question of competition with China, this has come up throughout this symposium, and it's a big issue generally. We heard the representative, Mr. Wu, who was saying that China needs a digital currency rather quickly, he says, to protect the independence of the central bank and also to give China its own sovereignty. Do you think that this is necessary from a European point of view? It could be the making of the euro, according to you. How much political effort is being put behind it, do you think?
I think the digital renminbi is a big challenge to the Western-dominated global payment system. I mean, we have seen it that the payment system is dollar-dominated. When under Donald Trump, the Europeans wanted to go on dealing with Iran, they couldn't do it because they were not able to come up with an alternative to the dollar-based payment system. So I would expect China, before the ECB perhaps is even ready to launch the digital euro, to internationalize the digital renminbi. This may well, as we could hear today also from one of the speakers, begin with introducing the digital renminbi as a means of payment in the near neighborhood to countries that have a lot of trade with China. And then they can use that as an invoice currency and make direct
so the Belt and Road, for example.
Yeah, indeed. You can roll this out further, the digital renminbi, along the Belt and Road Initiative, reaching into Africa, reaching into southeastern Europe. And
shouldn't that be a strong wake-up call to get our act together?
Yeah,
and
with that
move
you
this
gradually
project forward.
Move this forward to become a real serious challenger to the US dollar as an international reserve currency.
Yes, well, that could really speed things up. I mean, Wolfram, I think you think a digital euro could come much, much more quickly from a technical point of view. Indeed, the ECB has spoken about some design that they want to launch in the middle of 2021. Could Europe, if it really got its act together, have a digital euro within 2 years?
Technology-wise, absolutely. The technology is available. We even can offer a sandbox to try it out. We can also offer a toolbox to simulate thresholds, parameters, which are very important in order to mitigate possible risks in issuing such a digital device. And technology-wise, we're definitely ready. And the essence of the multiple discussions that we had with central banks around the world is we strongly believe that a digital euro needs to implement the European values, democratic values, and make it a simple instrument like cash is. So it's really, as you said it, Mr. Meyer, a euro banknote is a euro banknote. I would say a euro is a euro is a euro, has to be stable, must not be programmable, because we don't want to change the attributes of the payment token. But of course, it has to be usable in programmable business models. It has to be used in smart contracts. It has to be usable in smart new business models where new markets are currently rising. There's a lot of digital ledger infrastructure currently being developed where final settlement and payment is required. And here, the digital euro could offer a public payment system which could settle, let's say, multi-purpose, universal in all these new markets.
Could I just go to this, if I may just go to Natacha, because this brings us to your book, because you do speak in your book about the dignity of the human spirit and money being part of this. And therefore, you're getting into the core concept. Wolfram has spoken about values, European democratic values. Very interesting that the German Green Party, that looks likely it will be in the government after the September election, also speaks about a digital euro embodying the values of the European continent. But could you comment on that, Natacha, and also answer the question, does the public really want or need a digital euro when we have a lot of other very efficient payment systems? Several questions have come in from the audience. So here we all are talking about dignity and human spirit and values. The public just wants to have a payment mechanism.
Well, I think the payment mechanism is one thing, but the public wants to know what it holds. In a sense, we have a lot of, I don't call them currencies, but crypto assets. We have a lot of such entities that also have a payment function. That have very desirable technological, attributes. One of them being, distributed ledger, the safety, traceability. Anyway, all the things that Wolfram is a lot better than me to explain. But what's missing, and that's what the values bit is the link between all those desirable attributes and the sort of settleability. The fact that you need to be able to finalize the payment at the end of the day in something which is related to our common values, and our common values are being expressed even more so in the European Monetary Union than anywhere else, because it's the only real expression of us being together. It comes to the incompleteness of the monetary union. So this missing bit is really the link to what makes us a European people and what makes us belonging together to this union. So I think in that respect, yes, there is a desire, even if it is implicit, even if it is not, conscious or formulated in such a conscious manner, but a need for this missing link to be
Thank you. That's very valuable. I can see you playing a role in the German elections, Natacha. Thomas, you wanted to come in on a point I think that Wolfram was making earlier on.
Yeah, I only wanted to say that so far there are indications that the ECB is even afraid of the digital euro. I mean, I'm agree with Wolfram that this is a great opportunity, but the thing that I have seen from Mr. Binsal, for instance, who has done a very valuable paper, I think it was a little bit more than that, it was early 20, the paper. So he came up with a suggestion that the use by the private person, so by the non-bank person, the use of the digital euro be limited to 3,000 euros per wallet. Yeah, so they are afraid that the digital euro might disintermediate the banks and change the system around. I would say that would be great, because then we would have a truly common European currency. Right now we have a hybrid, right? This is not a truly common currency.
That's a very good point that you're making. This missing link could actually be the key to forming the system, but it could also drive a lot of business models into great jeopardy. That's a question which has come in from the audience. Maybe I can just put this to you straight away, Thomas. To what extent are the banks lobbying the ECB and other authorities on that issue, precisely that issue of their business model being very severely disrupted?
I believe that the banks have, of course, a great interest in keeping the credit money system running. At least they had it, because that was, of course, the source of their profits. Traditionally, credit bank makes its profit from the interest spread. I call it actually part of the seigniorage of making money.
Yes.
The central bank gets the seigniorage on the spread of deposits and lending rates for central bank money, and the commercial banks get the spread from credit rates and deposit rates. So they were keen in keeping that. But right now, it would seem to me, we have a big disruption in the banking business anyway, because the spread is gone. The traditional credit banks that have always been seen so as at the core of the European banking system, they're suffering from this. Where you see now the source of profits come from is the capital markets business. And what I'm saying is that if you would establish the euro as a full coin, right, not as a derivative of the credit money, as Mr. Binsal in his paper was indicating might happen. If you would establish it as a full coin, the bank's business would be more like the business of a capital market institution. I mean, I'm working at a fund. We collect money from customers, and then we pass it on and invest it, right? And however, as a fund, we pass on the fluctuations of the value of the investment directly to the customer.
Yes, it would be changing completely the nature of banking. I think it's a very good point that you're making here. We're getting towards the final 10 minutes. So, Wolfram, could I put the question to you that I put also to Natacha? You deal with payment systems across the piece. And Jay Powell has apparently asked this question, and I'm putting it to you now, according to one of our listeners. What problem would a CBDC solve? Does the public really want or need a new digital form of central bank money to complement what is already a highly efficient, reliable and innovative payments arena? Now, Natacha has given us an answer to that. What is your answer to that question, please, Wolfram?
I truly believe that in this world that is growing more and more digital, we have to offer a public form of digital currency, of digital money. There are multiple private formats, which are all driven by private business models and guided by profit, while the central bank is issuing public money, which is guided by public welfare. And that's the only full inclusive system, to be honest. And if we want to include everyone of society, all groups of society, also the weaker parts of society, into a digital future, I believe the state has to engage and develop a platform which then allows private initiatives to develop innovation on it. But the minimum functionality of settlement payment and also store of value needs to be offered by the central bank as a public good.
Just before we go to Natacha, I just want to put the same poll again, just one of these questions, just to see if anybody's changed their mind. So people could just be filling in the poll while we come to an end here. When will we see a digital euro? Within 2 years, within 5 years, within 7 years, or never? I'd just like to get people to see whether they've actually changed their mind over the last 15 or 20 minutes. So if you could be doing that, please. And then, Natacha, I have a question for you, which is tailor-made for you from one of the listeners. And this listener says, is the euro, a digital version thereof, is this likely to put pressure onto the countries which are not yet part of the euro, the Denmark, Czech Republic, Sweden, Hungary, Poland, and so on? Will this put pressure on them to join the euro? Is this all part of some cunning plan by the ECB to get the membership of the euro up a bit?
That's a bit far-fetched. I would say, I mean, I'd like to say, but actually I will say it. If given the quality and the characteristics of all digital progresses that have been made in payment systems, if central banks are able to absorb all this and replicate it in each monetary area, including smaller countries, a similar level of sophistication, we will be able to should be able to generate a system, an interconnected system of currencies, of different currencies, which is way superior to any kind of cross-currency exchanges at the retail level, at the wholesale level that we see now. A lot of runs will be gone. So a lot of players won't, all the Western unions of this world will probably have to rethink about their business model. But this is why I don't. So the answer is, I don't think so. I don't even think that's the plan. There may be an interest in generating like a network effect that is already there, but that would be even expressed in a stronger way, maybe. But I would say we should think about it the other way. We should think about what happens in the world where all central banks have their CBDC, and all those CBDCs are able to connect together. And then we have a network of something which is a huge missing bit in the international monetary system, which is a stable coin of public money, so to say.
Well, this is exactly the idea that we want to get to in the final 5 minutes, looking at the future. So let's get your view of the future, starting with Thomas. It seems to me that you think a cashless society is definitely coming. It could actually solve some of the intrinsic problems that we have of the euro area. In Natacha's brave new world of CBDCs being linked together, surely there'll only be 2 or 3 real actors here, won't there? Because the weaker players will either disappear or they'll merge their currencies into the more dominant currencies, and that would be what would happen to the zloty. Is this not indeed an idea of becoming, of setting up dominant currency blocks that will somehow interact with each other around the world?
Yeah, I mean, we're living even more so than in the past. Since the pandemic, we're living in an era of disruption. So just sticking to old stuff won't bring you into the future. So the ECB, in my view, is far, far too sleepy in this regard. Second point, I think in the euro area, I'm not confident that we will get a euro state. So therefore, for the euro to survive and to play a role of its own, I think you would have to divorce the euro from the state. And digitalization is almost a God-sent opportunity to do so. And if we can do that, and if the euro is being used as a common currency over many European states, plural, right? Then it will find a role on the international scene. If it remains a hybrid, on the one hand, a state currency, but on the other hand, no state currency because you don't have a state. If it remains a hybrid, I think it will just be squeezed between the 2 key protagonists that I see coming up, which is a digital dollar and a digital renminbi.
Yes, well, that's quite a bold proposition. So the euro will have to invent a state to go with it. Otherwise, it will be squeezed between the renminbi and the dollar. That's basically what you're saying. Wolfram, I think you believe we will see a digital euro by the year 2025. But will we not have to somehow resolve that basic imponderable that Thomas has just spoken about. To mention the Greens again, the Greens say they want a federated European republic. That's part of their election program. Is that what we need to go with the digital euro, Wolfram?
Well, clearly, we have to have a debate on multiple levels, and there needs to be a strong assessment and evaluation of what is the best technology, because we need robustness, we need future-proof, we need cyber-secure technologies, but that can be solved, and the technology is available. We then need to have, of course, a debate on the level of the central banks, which Thomas has referred to as well. On the regulations and the rules, on the design parameter and design criteria for the digital euro. And last but not least, we also have a political debate, because the question how anonymous a digital euro should be is also a political debate. And here, Europe most probably has a few more challenges than other states, because we have to align our views. But I see such a strong potential for efficiency in payment systems, for innovation, and also for the future of the financial and the economic position of Europe vis-a-vis other economies, that we have to go that route, and we need to speed up that debate and make it happen. Give it a trial. The technology is available. Let's embark on that journey.
Good. I'm going to give Natacha the final word. You've got 3 minutes left, but I will just read out one of the results of the opinion poll. On this admittedly relatively limited audience, you, our three protagonists, seem to have changed people's minds, because when we asked at the beginning, only 12% said the digital euro would come within 2 years. That number has now doubled, more or less, and now I see that 21% say that the digital euro will become a reality within 2 years. So somehow you've managed to change people's minds. So thank you for doing that. Natacha, final word. Will European people really like to see European values on their banknotes? Will that be something which is, if you like, an election winner? Or surely what they actually want is decent living standards, good education, and better healthcare. You know, do they really care about democratic values on their banknotes?
Well, I think the first question is really, I mean, a challenge is for citizens to understand that having a euro is a factor that drives, you know, better being together, higher living standards, better education, better health systems. That's also a task for the politicians, right, to make this a tangible reality. And then I like to joke about the fact that, you know, euro banknotes, as you all know them, have, you know, bridges that don't exist and are so virtual in their icons that I think anything that can be done to change them will be an improvement. So having a beautifully, you know, designed with some European identity in terms of individuals, in terms of values, being brought into a digital sphere would be a plus and would help, you know.
Okay, that's going to be the final question. Wolfram, what should be on the new digital euro? I'm going to ask you, all three of you, what should be on it? Just a one-word answer.
I have to disappoint you. It's just numbers. It's bytes and bits. Yeah. However, the form factor will then be supplied by multiple diverse offers. It could be a wristband, it could be a watch, it could be a phone, it could be a smart card. So the format, how it will be experienced.
Okay, I'm going to ask Thomas, and then again, you'll have the last word, Natacha. Should it be Mario Draghi, the picture on the new digital euro?
The euro sign. Just the euro sign.
Okay, Natacha, your final word. And let me just flash up again this book that I'd like people to buy, Le Futur de la Monnaie. And it's also written by a co-author, your colleague, Michel Agletta. We shouldn't discriminate against men. I should mention that. Your final word, the euro digital, the symbol.
I'd like to see a symbol and to see something related to something human. So maybe someone, it will be a difficult discussion, but even bringing that discussion, you know, among ourselves might help finding a common denominator. You know, in the 19th century, we had a couple of novels by great German writers, great French writers who relate to that. So we might be able to find someone really who speaks to everyone.
Well, maybe Marie Curie would be a good person. I'll put that down as my suggestion anyway. So thank you for a very lively discussion, which has really been exactly what we wanted, which is to look into the future, but also to look at what lies behind a digital era in terms of the concept of money. It's not just technology. It's not just people wanting privacy and anonymity and ease of payment. It's something more than that. So I'd like to thank all of you, Wolfram, Thomas, and Natacha, with your splendid new book, which will soon be available in English as well. Thank you all very much for taking part in this discussion. I'm now going to hand over. We're going to have a scintillating discussion from Haiti about the introduction of digital currency in Haiti. So thank you all very much indeed. Enjoy the rest of the symposium. Goodbye.
Thank you, David. Bye-bye.